Alright, so welcome to our next edition of Tech Tips. I'm changing it from Tech Talk to Tech Tips because on the PBA, Randy they do the track Tech Talk thing, so I don't want any similarity going on there. I'm pretty sure I was doing it first, but anyhow, we're going to call it Tech Tips now. I failed to mention on the mailbag episode, my body armor flavor today is strawberry banana. It's delicious. But this episode is going to be about increasing your scores by just paying attention. There's a lot of people that they think it's a magic ball or a magic layout or a magic surface or whatever else when it's something a lot easier than that, that's a lot easier to control, something that you can, just by paying attention to a few little things, and it doesn't require having an app, it doesn't require writing everything down, it doesn't require whatever else, but just some general observations, really. It's not even so much paying attention as just observing a few different things. So most of the questions I get asked are about layouts or surfaces, cover types, core numbers, a lot of math and technical stuff. Now these are all questions I can't accurately answer because of the infinite number of variables. Now what I can offer help on is like shape, hook difference from ball to ball, and the most important information of all, yet the topic I get the fewest questions on, is just paying attention. A lot of people say that they get lost in transition, and transition, especially on a house shot, can be tricky if the only thing that you're paying attention to is your own ball reaction. However, there are a lot of easily trackable, if trackable is even a word, things that you can monitor or observe that will help you out, even if the people you're bowling with are either actively destroying the shot or just have no idea what they're doing. So here are a few obvious but critically important things to take note of and the transition that they cause. Sanded or matte finish balls obviously take a lot of oil off the lane. Most of the time they cause track burn, head oil depletion, which will create more friction, make your ball hook more. Shiny balls most often cause carry down and the tendency of your ball to wiggle at the break point, so to speak, or act like it's going to finish and then just not quite get up the hill or be lazy. Flare potential, however, is the most important factor in lane transition in my mind. A sanded or matte finish ball with low flare potential, such as traditional urethane, will pick up oil all the way down the lane, but will continue rolling over the same oil track, thus picking up oil early and then dumping it on the back end. That's why most people hate urethane bowling against people that are using urethane, especially on a house shot. It just completely destroys a shot for everybody else using resin. However, a ball like the Hot Cell or the Black Widow urethane with their massive flare potentials will expose fresh cover to the lane on every rotation and thus will not cause any different transition than your average resin ball will. Higher flaring balls will still create minor amounts of carry down, but the more a ball flares, the smaller the bow ties are, which are where the oil tracks cross on the top and the bottom of the ball. And the bow tie area is the only place with oil on it that will contact the dry boards on the back end. So for league, just regular house shots, I favor high flaring, shiny covers, specifically because the transition is extremely predictable. Very little carry down with slow and steady track burn that will allow you to make moves before, completely screwing you over. Now that's all fine and good to control your own transition, but what about what everybody else is doing? I hear a lot of, well, that guy's using urethane, or that guy's using this, or that guy's using that. All you have to do is pay attention to what they're doing and adjust accordingly based on the three factors I listed above. Surface, shiny, flare potential, which are all visually obvious. None of these things require you to do any research or have a mental ball catalog going. You don't have to try to memorize core numbers and all that nonsense, but a quick look at the oil lines on balls coming back on the ball return in practice are going to tell you what kind of flare potential they have anyway without you having to Google every ball on the rack to look up the differential. Now the next step is to note where everyone's playing, either to take advantage of the transition they're creating or to completely avoid their transition. If you're a straighter player, you stand to benefit most of the time if somebody's increasing friction in the track, so you might want to align yourself with where they're playing to kind of increase your reaction. However, if you typically have to move left during a night and there's someone playing a few boards inside of you, make a note of that so when you move, you don't move right into their track and then wonder why moving left made your ball hook even more. Now that's some of the simple stuff, but what about stuff that's maybe a little bit more involved? Stuff like player rev rate. No matter where a player is playing on the lane, as their rev rate goes up, the speed of transition will increase to match. Sometimes a 500 rev rate with a high flaring shiny ball can transition a lane faster than a 250 rev rate with a sanded high flaring ball, simply because at twice the rev rate, that shiny ball is still picking up oil on every turn, albeit not quite as much per revolution as a sanded ball, but the increase in rev rate multiplies it more quickly. Then there's the type of lane oil that's being used. Some oils are higher viscosity, which reduce friction more, and some are lower viscosity, which allows higher amount of friction. Higher viscosity oils like Kegel Ice typically hold a shot longer, but can be a nightmare if you blow a hole in it, which creates too much friction in the track, causing kind of a wet, dry, wet mess. Or if you use low flaring urethane and transition a lot of that onto the back end. Now, lower viscosity oils like Kegel Fire are generally more scorable early, but transition much more quickly and can turn into a nightmare if you don't pay attention to what you're doing. Lane hardness is also a factor. Part of why balls are being designed to be more aggressive is oil type and oil volume, but synthetic lanes are also much harder than wood, which reduces friction, which reduces hook. The harder the lane is, the less total hook you're going to see and the slower response. The softer the lane is, the more hook and the quicker response you're going to see. My final point here is that an average is not raised by shooting bigger scores. It can be, but the easiest way to raise your average is to increase your low scores. Shooting 750 is all fine and good, but if you come back the next week and follow that up with 550, you've totally negated all the work that you did the previous week. Instead, if you follow 750 up with 650, that's huge when it comes to average maintenance and especially tournament performance. How many times have you shot a couple big sets in a tournament and then had a total letdown in one that kind of killed your overall finish? So if you pay more attention and you think about how the ball you're throwing is going to impact transition, that's step number one. Second step is to pay attention to what everybody else is doing. The third and final step is to limit the damage on the bad nights when you're throwing it poorly or when everyone else on the lane is beating the shot up. This doesn't require spreadsheets, it doesn't require an app, like I said, which doesn't tell you anything besides spare conversion percentage anyway. It just requires a bit of extra attention. The rest is really obvious. Practice more, make your spares, but paying attention will add an extra strike or two a game and leave you with much easier spare conversions more often. That's this episode of Tech Tips. Good luck and good bowling. Drink body armor.